So, we're going to talk about behavioral disorders and emotional disorders, and I think this is a very sort of practical thing in a lot of ways, and so I want to have a lot of discussion about it, get you guys thinking about it. So, when you hear behavioral and emotional disorders, what do you think of? What examples from your history in classrooms? What students, what were they doing? What sort of things do you think of?
Depression.
Okay.
And just students being extremely unmotivated all the time, not wanting to participate.
Okay. Well, there's sort of behavior problems are in classes.
Like students that are rude.
Well, true story, a student who had this type of disability choked his teacher.
Ooh.
Who had a true, I mean, if we're
That
going
would be
big and going
extreme.
strong, yes.
Yeah.
Another student who was diagnosed at the kindergarten level brought a butter knife with them on the bus and threatened other students and said they were going to cut them open and drink their blood.
Wow.
At schools that I've worked in. Anyway, go on.
So, any more everyday examples that you guys can think of? I mean, obviously a disorder means that there's a serious and sort of consistent problem going on, right? But they're, and that's sort of where you differentiate. But a lot of the activities that they do are more normal. So, defiant behavior. What are some examples of defiant behavior?
I'm not wanting to do anything in the class. You give them homework and won't do it.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty easy to identify, right? I mean, they're yelling at you or, doing something loud. So, but you mentioned depression. How do you notice depression in the classroom?
Well, like I said,
What do the students start out?
they don't participate, very unmotivated, maybe don't talk much at all,
Maybe
looking out
that's-
the window or looking at the floor.
Maybe that's less obvious behavior. You think of them sort of as internal or external behavior. So you have these two forms, internalizing and externalizing. So grab a sheet of paper. I'm going to have you guys go down this list real fast and just sort of think about them. Throw them into 3 columns, 1 column externalizing, 1 internalizing, and the other just sort of a catch-all. Just take a couple minutes to go through the whole list. But
Sure.
give me a shout out if you're noticing any things that you're having trouble categorizing, if there are any patterns, and I don't know what the catch-all column ends up looking like.
3 is kind of the catch-all.
Yeah, just you could place it in the other 2 for some reason. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this beat and look further if you want. So, are these big names? Are these, ADHD? Are these bipolar? Are these, diagnosed things? Or a lot of these sort of everyday characteristics of those students? What?
I found in the first place, at least the first 10, most of them are not very disturbing to me because of things I would expect out of kids. A lot of, not necessarily the ones I could relate to, but things that many people I know growing up was not bizarre, not strange at all. That was really what I expect.
Okay.
I think as isolated characteristics, they're not, many of them aren't too threatening, but obviously the problem comes into play when they start stacking.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a
All
consistent
35
problem,
of these
and
every day.
And you can't do, if you feel like you're at a loss of communication with them,
Right.
because you can never get through to them, that's when it becomes sort of this disorder.
5 was very disturbing to me.
Which was that?
Doesn't know how to have fun. I mean, if you don't enjoy life, it's going to be a bad road.
Break you guys into 2 groups and let you discuss some things here. So, over here. If you want to grab a chair.
Actually, no, I'll come.
Okay, so if you want to move over.
Yeah.
So you guys should talk about how do these disorders create problems for the teacher and how what these such in the classroom. And you guys should discuss what problems do these disorders create for students. How do you teach students?
Obviously, it's affecting everybody.
Like these things in students, how they, like these things,
Those sorts of things.
how they affect the student.
Am I in this group or that group? Sorry, this group over here.
Yeah.
You should give us your ideas before you go.
Share. What are we going over? You guys are talking about, you want to talk?
My understanding these things and how they affect the students.
How, like, issues affect you, like, sports, or acting down, like, what problems affect the students?
As far as learning?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what the teacher can do.
Sure. You have to correct them.
I think like number 5. But girls don't really suffer from this issue because girls just want to have fun.
True story. Get a few ideas, write down some ideas of what teachers can do.
That's so great.
And how they do it.
Just go with it.
So, I mean, obviously,
And it comes down to,
Are you keeping track of time?
going to draw on the board.
Am I halfway?
be aware
You're at
of
6 minutes.
Sure. If they're not paying attention, like,
Yeah,
there's gonna be
yeah.
Okay,
surface.
what do we have for our best ideas from the different groups?
What were the problems? You got the other one that sounds like
Honestly, I think the best idea we came up with was girls just want to have fun. We didn't get to talk about the rest. It's going to affect their ability to concentrate and to not only be aware of what's going on in the classroom, but to be aware of their learning, if any deep learning is going on at all.
Okay. And problems?
Destructive for the entire classroom, not just their learning, it's disrupting everybody else's.
Okay. And what does the teacher do about that?
Try to keep the students engaged as much as possible, really cut down on how much disruption there is. If they're engaged in what's going on and the process at hand, they're less likely to be.
What are some specific things that might be a good thing to do to cut down on disruption in the classroom?
Cut down on lag time or dead time between activities or between sections of the lesson.
Okay.
Keep things moving.
And how did you guys think would be good methods for dealing with problems?
Oh, I like what John just said, about keeping them constantly engaged.
Okay.
I think like not having, when you were going from
What
one
can
thing
you do
to
another
another,
student
like,
to work on their problems? Okay. So I gave you 2 sort of slightly different questions that are sort of the same big question, but they were phrased differently. Yours was more teacher-centered. You know, what's going on in the classroom? How is this affecting my instruction? How do I, get things back on track in the lesson? How do I control what's going on? You guys, I was asking, how do you help the students, more student-centered question, to deal with the problems that are being caused for them? So this idea of student-centered and teacher-centered, think about what are our big goals in teaching? What are the 2 goals? They're on the rubric.
Convey basically a deep consensual understanding of the information.
Okay.
Help them perform this process.
Okay. So, in which mode of thinking are you more likely to be achieving these goals?
thinking about how the student feels with
talking about student-centered classrooms, right? So the stuff I looked at was one of the articles was admittedly with elementary schoolers, but it was looking at, how does inquiry help with these sorts of things? How do you, what's the 5E plan here? How do you engage the student who's having the problem? How do you, and feel free to shout out ideas. How do you explore with them what their problem is? How do you get them, what's a good idea? How do you get them to have a plan, right?
It's important to have a positive outlook on, not putting down and stuff. I've heard it was a true story of a teacher, and the parent-teacher conference night, and had like 2 kids in the class with the same name. And one of the parents came, and it was assumed that it was the parent of the good child, but it was actually the opposite parent of that child. And the teacher talked about how wonderful this child was and all that, and went home the next day. The child brought back home where he didn't have any problems from there on out. So,
Okay. So maintaining positive outlook, that's good. Goal-oriented, that would be, help the students set goals. Keep track of them with the student. If you're doing math, you might graph them. These sorts of behaviors, instances of these sorts of behaviors over time. What's your trend? So you're introducing them goals, you're assessing along the way, and then you're evaluating. What does this sound like? Does it sound like anything else we've been talking about? Helping them to do what with themselves?
Regulate
themselves. Yay! Okay. So, and the study found that this sort of emphasis on self-regulation was extremely important. And a couple of words that I don't think come up that much that were introduced to me in these articles are control and power. And why is control important to the teacher?
Because you want to show that you're the authority in your classroom,
To enable,
so that you eliminate some of the behavior problems, so that kids know they can't act out.
why is control important to the student?
Maintain a good learning environment for not just that student, but everyone else around them.
Okay. Who needs to feel that they have power?
Students.
And how does that help them?
It takes ownership over their own learning.
Okay. They're learning, what else? What about power relationships with their classmates? Is that important? Do they need to have power over their classmates in some?
Necessarily power over the power with.
Okay.
kind of equality.
Yeah. The ability to influence other people to form that social interaction. So, any questions? Or practical applications, maybe. So, what happens, so you establish some methodology, so say you're trying to monitor the situation with your student, is that going to work all the time? Are you going to be able to say, hey, let's talk about how this behavior is going, let's graph it, let's hope that is that going to help butter knife kid? What do we do with butter knife kid?
Sound a psych ward?
Maybe work with them, ask them, maybe external factors that could be affecting them at that point in time. Maybe their parents are abusive or something. There's something else that's affecting that, and maybe you can correct that.
But it's good to think of safety valves. If you're working with someone who has ADD, and you might want to allow them to get up and walk around in the back of the classroom when they're trying to, but you organize that with them so that if they need to, they have some recourse. Or in the case of someone who you're afraid is a danger to other people, the safety valve might be more in the lines of getting them more serious help or getting them moved or removed from the situation. So the other thing I just wanted to mention is that, as Katie mentioned, teacher perception. is very important. If you notice what the actual heading at the top of the sheet I gave out to you is that, this was a study on how do regular education teachers as opposed to special education teachers view these different behaviors at different levels, like elementary, middle, high school. And they have very different ideas of what's threatening. Gang activity is probably more threatening in high school because it's actually a problem. So keep in mind what's threatening to you. Try to focus on student-centered methods. Think about how you can help the student rather than shut them down. If the student feels like they have control, they're more likely to self-control. They won't be a problem all the time. Done? Done.